is Alex Ontiveros. I think most of you know me, and if this is your first time meeting me, it's nice to meet you. We are really happy and proud of this video because it showcases the work that we've done over the last several years. And for us, it's about empowering our community, but specifically about empowering our youth. That's one of our main focuses, right? And these type of events, like the Fireside Chat that we're gonna experience in a minute, and the panel, the Inspire Hire tours that we've done are about that, right? And one of the things that's like so special about what we're doing here today is that somebody in our community saw this and they said, we believe in that and we want to partner with you and we want you to bring it to our community in Milpitas. And I'm going to introduce that gentleman in a bit, but without his support, without that vision, we wouldn't be at where Silicon Valley Latino is today. So I want to welcome you. I want to thank you for being here this afternoon. We're going to feature two exceptional leaders in civic leadership and in education this afternoon. And the thing that's interesting about this particular Fireside Chat is that this is the first time we're experimenting with the iconoclast model, okay? I don't know if any of you have seen that on the Sundance channel, but it's when two celebrities get to interview each other. And that's what we're doing today. These are our celebrities. They're going to be interviewing each other. Yeah, absolutely. And so, okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce the gentleman that I was talking about earlier. He is a Cultura ambassador. He is an education champion, and he's the person that has made this collaboration and these programs available and possible to the community here in Milpitas. So our friend, Vice President of San Jose City College, Jorge Escobar.
Good afternoon, everybody. Muy buenas tardes a todos. It is a pleasure having you here at the San Jose City College extension in Milpitas. It is an extension of our main college campus. And what is happening here is transformational. You know, in a very short period of time, we've been able already to make this an educational innovation lab in Milpitas. And there's a vision that is being fulfilled. And some of that vision was actually presented by Mr. Bob Nuñez when he was a trustee at Milpitas Unified School District. And it was part of that vision that actually happened, and that's why we have this facility here today. But, you know, we struggled with the date. You know, are we going to do this on a Saturday, on a Friday, Thursday? Do we do it in June? Do we do it in May? So somebody said, well, let's do it the day before Mother's Day. So yeah. But Mother's Day is actually important and is relevant to all your the mothers and moms, mamás acá en este sitio. Because similarly to the mother that, you know, gets the child and the kid grows, gets educated, becomes independent, and also a member of society, educators do that. But they work in organizations that have the mission, the vision, the values to make that happen. But I always say that educators are also kind of different people. And I say, you know, what do I mean by different people? They are a different kind of people. And I always joke around and I say, you know, to be a priest or a nun, you have to be different. To be a doctor, you have to be different. But also to be an educator, you need to be different. And that is because educators have to have a very clear mind, so you can have a vision. You have to be doers, right? Because you're building always bridges and removing barriers and doing all these type of things because they are builders. But more importantly, they have to have a heart. I found that the best way of describing these two people that have been transformational in my life, but also in the lives of so many people here in San Jose. So it is my privilege to invite you to you know, welcome Dr. Lopez and Bob Nuñez. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jorge. My name is Adam Mendoza, and I am a Vice President of Marketing with Silicon Valley Latino. And I'm very, very proud of the work we're doing, the work that we're blood, sweat, and tears. Blood being, I broke my finger earlier setting up the perimeter here, so I'm going to I'm going to go seek medical aid right after our presentation today. But I'll be okay. But I just wanted to say a few words. And my job today is to stay on script, which I've been known to get off script, so I'm going to try to stay. I'm staying on script today. Of course, the reason being I normally don't stay on script is these glasses I'm just getting used to. All right. Remember that time when you, reading glasses, my future. But I am very proud of the work that we're doing with Silicon Valley Latino. One of our core values is extending our professional network to students who strive for success, to support and inspire and help lead, to create a better community for all, as Alex puts it, to make the invisible visible. Today we're very excited to feature two giants in the community who have dedicated a life's work to education and empowerment in our community. First off, Dr. David P. Lopez, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Latino Education Innovation. Through alliances such as these with our friends, for example, at the Foundation of Hispanic Education, creating initiatives like Maestro, Accelerator Program, a robust pipeline for Latinos seeking a career in education, like my daughter. Dr. Lopez brings more than 35 years of higher education, K-12 experience to the role as he continues to work to expand access to affordable, quality education for Latinos and underserved students. Prior to his role as Executive Director, Dr. Lopez served as the National Hispanic University's President and Chancellor from 2003 to 2013. Dr. Lopez has received numerous awards and accolades, including the American Diabetes Association National Father's Day Council Father of the Year Award in 2004. That one particularly struck me. That's very impressive. Father of the Year. Think about that. Please welcome Dr. David Lopez. We're also proud to welcome City of Milpitas Council Member Bob Nuñez. Bob brings nearly 50 years of experience to his role as Milpitas Councilman, focusing on mentoring and providing leadership training to aspiring school administrators as well as school board members. He was voted onto the Milpitas Council seat in 2016, correct? And continues to serve today, helping school officials and other government agencies to provide quality education to all students. He was a former superintendent of one of the largest school districts in Northern California. As superintendent, the district was fiscally solvent and test scores increased. Programs for at-risk students were added to all high school grade levels, among other accomplishments. Councilman Nuñez is responsible for a long list of programs to assure the future of success of students in our community. We're very, very honored and welcome Councilman Bob Nuñez.
So, Bob, would you like to begin? I could say something about Bob. The reason why I accepted this, to do this today, is, well, I was asked by Jorge and others, but I've known Bob for many years, and I've truly respected him as a professional and as a person. When I saw him at Eastside Union High School District, and I was president of National Hispanic University, he not only ran around and did all that he had to do with the teachers and the unions and all the things that superintendents do, he was always with parents. He always had a group of parents he was working with. They were out doing soccer programs, and I always respected Bob for that because he found the time to actually work directly with the families that he was serving, and that was critical. And I think that comes from probably his upbringing, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that, because I'll share that with you also about how I got into education and how my parents influenced me. And I've never said no to a parent or turned away a parent because my mother asked for a lot of help, and she got it from a lot of people. But I'll share those stories later on. But that's why I accepted this. But before talking about what we're going to share, is I'd like to congratulate the mothers for the Mother's Day on May 10th, if you're Latina or Mexicana, that's when you celebrated it. And for the mothers celebrating tomorrow, it's an incredible experience to see recently here my daughters having children and seeing them become mothers. And what I witnessed, obviously, with my own mother. But that's very important. So with that being said, thank you all for being here. And I'd like to give a special thank you to Jorge Escobar for putting a lot of this together and making the effort to always look for innovation and bringing the community together. I really appreciate that. Michael Mooney, who works here, and all of you that are here with us today. So there'll be many other opportunities, hopefully, that Jorge will be putting together here. And I've been working a little bit with him on some things. So I'm excited about the Milpitas campus. And I think Milpitas, Milpa, that means what? Cornfield, field, right? So I'll share a little bit about the fields that I worked in when I was a very young man, when my dad didn't believe in tractors. My brother Billy was International Harvester and I was John Deere. We had to plow with actually horses, believe it or not. And I know my daughter's not in here, but those lessons taught me a great deal about persistence. But with that being said, thank you for having me.
You know, one of the things I always liked about Dr. Lopez is that he was never one lost for words. And when we first met, the one thing I always admired about him, even though I was with parents all the time, is that he would take those same parents and make sure that they were included in everything, not only making sure that there was, now you hear about parent involvement, parent engagement. He did that even when their children were involved at the university level. And he made sure that he trained them so that they were ready to take on city government, county government, the state government. And he did it both in English and in Spanish. So as I look back, I learned more from him in the first year that I was here than almost anyone else. And I admired him so much that I kept staying here just to watch what he did at NHU. And I think there was only one other university that, like NHU, in the United States at the time.
What do you call college in Europe?
That's right. And so this community was lucky to have NHU here and Dr. Lopez in charge of it. And I'm really thankful that all of you came out. You know, it's interesting to me that persons that first meet me always sort of wonder how I ended up here. Because I'm originally from Orange County and I have this sort of Orange County accent, people say. And it really is sort of how I say things and how I do things. But it's really being around persons like you, Dr. Lopez, and others in Santa Clara County that allow me to sort of adapt those things that I do, and not only in the Latino community, but really in the Vietnamese community, in the Muslim community, because we're really all trying to do the same thing, make sure that our children go to school, get a good education, go on to college, and have a better life than we have. And so as I look at those things, it all starts with a sound education. And in Orange County, what I found is that we were really good at providing a sound education if you knew how to maneuver through our systems. We weren't very good at helping you do that, and up here, we really were. It was because of persons like you. I could go to San Jose Unified and saw they had a whole unit that did that. At Eastside, we developed a unit to do that. And I think that's where I gained the desire to continue doing that. And now at the city of Milpitas, doing that. So that persons understood that we really are here for them. But it's some of those persons, such as yourself, Victor Garza, and others, that are really those persons that understand that government agencies really are here to help and not be roadblocks.
You know, now that you've mentioned that, Bob, thank you for those comments and those accolades. I'd like to take you back, because I'm kind of curious, I'm sure people are. You know, you've got tremendous values. Your work ethic is phenomenal. Your respect for people. How did those values come about? Tell us a little bit earlier about your upbringing and where that came from.
So actually, so I'll give you the 3-minute version, which will turn into 10. So being born in Orange County really is different than being born up here. But I was born in Anaheim, in Orange County, and I was born in
In Disneyland, right?
all close to Disneyland, but in my grandfather's house and in my grandfather's bedroom. And I remember my grandfather, as they described it, was in the outer room. And I was delivered by my grandmother. And, I remember there was a boxing match taking place that they described. Because growing up, my nickname was Champion. And, which turned out later to be shortened to Champion. And I had that nickname till I was 11. Then I said, don't call me that anymore. But as they talked about it, it was because there was a boxing match on. And I remember clearly that my grandfather kept saying, you have to remember, to my mother and father, I was the firstborn son, and he will be the champion. So we then moved to Bonaparte, which was a sort of small dairy town in Orange County, but the only part of the city that didn't have paved roads. A little barrio called Coyote in that city. So then growing up, we would walk in the mud to get to the school. But it was what we all thought, this is where we're all due, so. But it was 98% Latino. I always thought it was odd that at that school you could not speak Spanish because you'd be sent home. But when it came time for teacher conferences, we were the ones doing the translation to the parents. So I thought that was sort of different for us. But one night, between 6th and 7th grade, we moved across the street. And doing that simple thing, across the street, I changed school districts. And I went to a part of town that suddenly had curbs and gutter, sidewalks and paved roads. And now I was in a school that it was just my brothers and myself that were sisters that were Latinos. There weren't any others. And that really changed my whole perspective on education and how to get along. But at the end of that, in high school, it was really one English teacher that told me, you need to go to college. I didn't know quite why, but I did go to a community college. My friend was going, so I decided to go. I ended up graduating from high school with honors, which surprised everybody, including me. My friend ultimately dropped out after about 3 weeks from college. I stuck it out, but found out that I really did enjoy going to school. Found it easy, that's why I enjoyed it. But got my A degree, my BA, my master's, but I couldn't figure out is why there were so few persons that looked like me.
Yeah. I have to ask you this question because I know people are curious. I know here you were in a certain area of town. And well, a lot of us live in a certain area of town. A lot of our Latino kids live in a certain area of town. And I've always maintained that creativity and intelligence is not distributed by zip code, but opportunity is. So you went from where you were at to opportunity, as you saw it. And that gave you a leg up, that gave you some opportunities to do some different things, right? To interact with different people.
It did.
People were seeing you maybe a little bit differently. I mean, what?
Two things I think I realized. One is that I went to a school district that had more choices. But more importantly, I was surrounded by my friends and others from the other school district that wouldn't let me get in trouble. Whenever things, on Friday nights and Saturday nights when they went out and did their things, they actually wouldn't let me go. They would say, no, you have to stay home. And they would make me stay home. More because I was the one that was doing well in school. I sort of figured out later on in life. But at the school I started going to, I noticed that they actually had labs that had all the things you needed, as opposed to just watching one person do it and 5 of us watching, things of that sort.
And one of the things I've always admired is that you were in East San Jose, so based on that idea, we're not gonna move all the kids from East San Jose over to West San Jose to make a difference. It's about creating opportunity in East San Jose. And Bob was an administrator there, superintendent, you did. And you encouraged those kinds of opportunities. And that's, I think, critical to all of us as we work with kids, is we need to bring opportunities to them. We can't expect them to move as you did. You were very fortunate. I didn't leave the body. I couldn't leave the body. My parents had been there, I'll tell you, I was there a long time, so I had to grow up around some environmental situations. And I tell people, most of my friends are dead or in prison because of the environment that I was in. But I couldn't leave it, and I can tell you a little bit about why I was able to make it. But we have to create, and we have to think about, especially being here in Silicon Valley, the innovation center of the world, with the dollars that are here. We need to ask the questions, we need to create the opportunities to make sure that our kids are getting the experiences and opportunities that they need to be successful. Otherwise, we're gonna continue having the same challenges over and over. So I think everybody in this room is here because you're an engaged individual, okay? And you know a lot of other people that are engaged. We need to continue to push hard and have our voices heard. And I know all of you are doing this in the way that you do, in the area that you're in, to make sure that things are happening here, because I truly believe, like NHU and the things that I'll talk about in NHU in a second, we need prototypes, we need models, because this is the innovation center of the world. The ideas that we can come out with here in Silicon Valley, we can take throughout the region, throughout the state, throughout the nation, and it's needed. Conversations like this and support, and I hope everybody continues to talk to each other. We had some similar experiences, I'll share that. He's out there making some things happen. I love it. I love that about him, because I have other friends that are our age that are talking about retirement, that are having coffee at McDonald's, and that's all nice. But they're needed now more than ever, because if you have had a career of 40 years, 50 years, and you're healthy, you gotta be back in the fight. El movimiento is just starting, folks. And I'm not just talking about Latinos, I'm talking about the working poor. We have to have people engaged and helping, but others, it's critical, now more than ever. And that's why you can see the energy in me. I can't stop. And I just can't. My brother Billy from Albuquerque, New Mexico, keeps telling me, come home, retire. You've given California 37 years of your life. And I tell him, I can't. I'm just warming up. Okay? And that's what my dad told me. My dad always used to say, apenas te está calentando. You know, you're just warming up. So that's the kind of attitude you have to have, I think. And that's the kind of attitude he has. And he brought it to East Side. Now he's in Milpitas. We need more people like that. So Bob and I can't retire. We're not going to, that R word, forget it. Can't, I wouldn't see him even say the word retire.
Just that R word. But,
Sorry.
no.
I got excited.
Yeah, I know, but that really goes both ways. So one of the things that Dr. Lopez started that I find fantastic is that the work you're doing with the parent university at Santa Clara University, that he has actually, and I'd like you to talk about that, because that's something that has started with just a conversation, and now has all of the East Side, including Milpitas, taking parents onto a university campus in Santa Clara. And it goes way beyond parent involvement. It actually deals with showing them what it's like having your children on a university campus, what it's like to be an advocate on that campus, and then taking the parents off by themselves and showing them how to fight. And that's something that you don't find very often. And we actually, I think at the last one, we had more than 7 or 8 districts involved. And I'm looking forward to the next one where we can get beyond that.
That's a Latino Education Summit. I don't know if this is working, Alex, but I think I can project my
Yeah,
voice.
just-
I don't think it's working.
We're-
It's okay, I
We
can
can trade this
project.
back and forth,
I think you can hear me pretty well, right?
but we want to make
Well,
sure
we're
we
also-
record it.
We're also recording it, so that's why.
Okay, so thank you, Bob, for that recognition of the Latino Education Summit. It was an idea that started about 3 years ago when we thought we needed some folks to get up and begin to talk about education, that were actually doing the work. So we started with some school districts and some leadership, and that summit was on Santa Clara University 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and then this year they had the third. So we've been building on that to get voices of the people that are doing the work out in the schools, especially with Latinos, English language learners. So that is going on, and that will continue. So again, it's innovation, it's trying different things, it's looking to get people together to have great conversations. But I want to take a step back. I want you to know a little bit about me before I continue. I brought a couple of props up here with me. I brought Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. Okay? And then I also brought this Kachina doll. Okay? And this is, the Matachinas use the mask when they dance in New Mexico. There's 8 northern tribes. There's the Tewa, Tiwa, Towa, and Queris, and they're all from northern New Mexico. And they do those dances as spirits to bring rain, because rain and water is extremely sacred in New Mexico. Because if you don't have that, you're not gonna eat. So I told you earlier, milpa, milpitas. I thought, you know what, I grew up on a little farm, and those were the best lessons I think I ever had. And the reason why I brought these two is because now that everybody's doing their DNA, I found out that I'm a little bit Iberian and a little bit Indigena. And there was a statement made once about Indio Hispano in New Mexico, about Reyes Lopez Tejerina, who I once heard speak at the University of New Mexico, and I was only probably about 16 years old when my dad wanted to go hear him speak. And Reyes was doing this. He was a preacher, and he was just doing this with his hands. And my dad said, "Mira, qué bonito habla." So when you guys ever hear me give a speech and I'm standing, I'm sitting right now, but I'll be throwing my arms up because I learned to emphasize things and have some excitement and some enthusiasm when you speak. So, you know, Bob says I am not a loss for words. I wasn't always that way. I was always very shy. I just became that way because of opportunity. When I became I became a professor at Fresno State, I used to speak a lot, obviously, as a professor. But when I became president of NHU, I was always in front of groups, and I always got that excitement. But I'd like to take you back to something else. And when I was growing up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, you know, my mother would say, that's all they spoke was Spanish. My father, he spoke Spanish. And I was going to school, and I had older siblings, and they taught me English. So I did English, I spoke English pretty well, but I knew Spanish. So I can remember distinctly, and Bob talked about this when he was growing up in Orange County. I was in 7th grade, I was 12 years old, and Hernando Saavedra, I remember him, he had these big blue eyes, and he was looking over at me, he says, "Oye, no entiendo lo que está pasando aquí, David." It was his work, he was trying to do his work, right? So I said, "Mira, Hernando, hazlo así, mira, yo te ayudo." And I started helping him. And I was only 12, and all of a sudden, bless her heart, Mrs. Marks comes up to me, grabs my ear and just twisted my ear so hard. I didn't know what to do, I just froze, you know, but I was in pain, so I wasn't gonna scream. So, but I wanted to, believe me. And she looked at me and says, "Don't you ever speak that foreign language in this class." I'm 12 years old. I'm like, okay, I'll never speak Spanish again. I didn't say that, but I wanted to say it, right? And I looked over at Hernando Saavedra, like Bob's looking at me, I go, "I'm not gonna help you ever again." So I thought, gee, you know, I went home scared to tell my mom, scared to tell my dad. Because you know why? El respeto para la maestra o el maestro. So I go home and I'm like eating dinner and los frijolitos con la tortilla de chile verde. New Mexico is very hot. A lot of chile verde. And finally I told my mom, I said, "Mom, lo que pasó en la escuela hoy." And I started telling her. I started telling her that Mrs. Marks got mad at me because I was trying to help Hernando Saavedra. I even get touched when I think about it. And she looked at me And she said, esa maestra no sabe nada. I like froze. I go, the maestra no sabe nada. And she said, no. Nosotros hemos estado aquí por siglos. We've been here for hundreds of years in New Mexico speaking Spanish. She doesn't know the first thing about you and me and our families. And I was like, I was shocked because my mother and father never talked about the teachers. And she said, no, tú eres aquí, hablas español y hablas inglés. Y usa los dos. I was like, wow, my mom's a revolutionary. And I said, okay. So I went back to school. I didn't talk to Hernando in Spanish because I wasn't sure. But I guess my mom talked to them the best they could and said, well, I want my child to speak a little bit of Spanish. So I thought my mom was a revolutionary. She was taking on the system. So I graduated, went to high school, and I didn't want to go to college. Think about it. Here's Dr. David Lopez, president of National Hispanic University, professor at Fresno State for 22 years. I have a doctorate, and here's my dissertation. I was not going to go to college. It was July of 1970. Remember I said when I was 12? When I was 13, my sister was living in San Francisco. She invited me out in the summertime, and I came out to San Francisco. None of you are old enough to remember this. It was 1967. And I came to San Francisco and I saw the hippies. I saw all of the things that were going on. I smelled the aromas. Man, I thought, 13 years old, here's where I want to be. And then I went over and they said, junior college is free, community colleges. I know we're getting back to that, Jorge, and others. We're going to get back to getting our kids a free education, hopefully at the community college level and other levels. And I went back and told my mom, I'm going to go to San Francisco, Mom. College is free. So I just said that. I was only in 9th grade at the time. So I'm moving on. Here I go forward. I'm graduating from high school. I did not apply to any university because my plan was to go to San Francisco. This is 1970 now, okay? So I'm minding my own business, thinking I'm leaving Albuquerque to come to San Francisco. So my mother tells me one evening, I'm going to say it in Spanish and I'll translate. She says, oye, David, tienes que llevarnos con el licenciado Chávez, el abogado. Mañana a las 7 de la mañana. David, you're going to have to take us to see Mr. Chavez, the attorney, for those of you who don't speak Spanish. And I said, no, Mom, Daddy puede manejar. No, tú nos tienes que llevar. You're going to take us. I said, okay, Mom. So she made me. Here I'm 17 years old, July. My plan is to get out of Dodge, right, get out of Albuquerque. She went into the office. My dad had a business with Mr. Chavez. Mr. Chavez was a very prominent attorney. His son, Martin Chavez, was the mayor of Albuquerque for 2 terms, if you can look him up. So his son, here I'm talking to the elder. I'm sitting there. We get there, there's a big thick pen on his desk. He's sitting there with a nice suit, beautiful tie. My dad sits down, comienza a hacer su negocio. They're talking about some property, some values, some taxes, property rights. No, hey, que tanto. I'm not even listening to that. I'm just kind of sitting there. My mom stops the meeting. Senor Chavez, my dad gets a little upset because they're doing business, right? And she stops the meeting. She said, Senor Chavez, tengo una pregunta. He puts down that big thick pen. I'll never forget that. And I'm looking at, what is my mom doing? And she said, mi hijo David. She points at me and I'm like, now this is about me. So now I'm starting to panic. She said, quiere ir a San Francisco a volverse hippie. And I'm like looking at my mom, I'm looking at how Mr. Chavez is going to take this. My dad's like totally upset now. He's mad now. He's like wondering what's going on. Mr. Chavez says, puts a pen down. He says, David, right? I said, yeah. He goes, you want to go to San Francisco and be a hippie? I go, yes, I do. He goes, your mom doesn't want you to, obviously. He goes, did you apply to the University of New Mexico? I go, no. He goes, why not? I go, I don't know, I just didn't apply. Because I'm going to San Francisco, there's free college there. The San Francisco City College is free. He goes, no. He says, look, I'm just gonna ask you to do me a favor. I'm gonna give you a piece of paper here. Here's Mr. Ted Martinez. He's the vice president at the University of New Mexico. And here's his phone number. I want you to call him. Just call him. I said, okay, no problem. He wrote it, put it in my little pocket. My mom quieted down. My dad was happy. We left, got in the truck, went back to the house. My mom says, ¿Qué no le vas a hablar al señor Martinez? I said, oh, Mama, you're gonna call Mr. Martinez? I said, I picked up the phone. Remember those old phones? Ring, ring. That's how old I am, folks. So I call. The secretary says, yeah, we were expecting your call. Mr. Martinez is on vacation for 2 weeks. Thank God, bye. And I hung up. My mama tells me, pues, ¿qué pasó? What happened? I go, Mr. Martinez is on vacation for 2 weeks. I said, man, I'm out of here. I just need another month and I'm gone. So she said, okay. Boom. 2 weeks passed to the day. And I share this with the moms in this room and dads. She tells me, David, ¿qué no le vas a hablar al señor Martinez? Ya son 2 semanas. 2 weeks that you called him. He's on vacation. Now he's back. So I said, Mom, papelito lo perdí con el número. She goes, mira, David, ¿quién crees que lava tus camisas? Who do you think washes your shirt? She found the little number and everything. She had it. She gave it to me. Oh my God, I'm still trying to figure out how do I get out of this. So 17-year-olds are very creative and bright, but you can't let them get away. No te puedes sacar de jacal. You gotta stay. Anyway, she kept me in there. She made me call, and so Mr. Martinez answers, and I share this story for a reason. Mr. Martinez answers. He says, yes, we've been waiting for you. Come and see me today at 2 o'clock. I get there at 2 o'clock. Guess who wants to go with me in my 57 Chevy? My mom. So here I go to the University of New Mexico. I remember Loma Street, his administration, vice president, Senor Chavez, Mr. Martinez. I walk in, the secretary says, hi, you must be David. This must be Miss Lopez. Sit down, have a seat. So we sat down like this. Mr. Martinez comes out. He didn't even look at me. Went straight to my mom. Señora Lopez, gracias por querer ayudar a su hijo. Thank you for wanting to help your child. And he never acknowledged me for about 5 minutes. He started talking to her, telling him that that's how he got to college. His mother always wanted him to go to school, on and on and on. Finally, he looked over at me and says, why haven't you applied to the University of New Mexico? I said, I want to go to San Francisco. The college is free. He goes, no. He says, look, let me make a few phone calls. And I'd like to see if I can get you into the university. So all of a sudden, he made a few phone calls. Next thing I know, they have me getting a little job as a teacher's aide in the Albuquerque public schools. He made that happen. He had a little scholarship. It was a little stipend that they had from a federal program called the Career Opportunity Program. All of a sudden, I was enrolled and teaching in a little elementary school. So moral of the story is, moms, dads, you can and have to guide your children, because 17-year-olds have ideas. They have dreams. I never made it to San Francisco, but guess what? I got my doctorate. And you remember that story I told you about Mrs. Marks? When she told me, you don't speak that language in this class? Well, I went on and I got a master's in curriculum and instruction. I got a doctorate in curriculum and instruction. And guess what the title of my doctorate is? I'll read it to you. A study of the attitudes of professional and pre-professional personnel relative to the bilingual certification plan adopted by the state of New Mexico, December of 1996. I did my dissertation on bilingual ed. And that teacher, Mrs. Marks, poor thing, que descanse en paz, she thought she was doing the right thing. She wasn't building on my strengths. Okay, so you never know where your experiences are going to lead, but I do know one thing, and that's why I do, as Bob said, what I do today. When I became a professor at Fresno State, I always worked with parents. When I became the president of NHU, especially if a parent came into that office, do you think I was going to tell them, no tengo tiempo? I don't have time for you? No, my mother would have turned in her grave. And she'd have said, no te enseñé nada? So, parents are critical in the process of education. It's not just up to Bob Nuñez and Dr. David Lopez to educate our kids or the teachers. We need the parents, but we need to do it right. We can't just do, no son buenos padres. We have to look for models that encourage them, and Pique was one, you mentioned that. There's also the Poder de los Padres that I've worked with at Fresno State. So those are the kinds of things that we need to continue to do, and those are the kinds of things that Bob Nuñez and I are continuing to do. And I share those things with you because I wanted you to know my background about Indio Hispano. I called myself Chicano at the time, I still do. I have my own identity. We can't lose that. We can't lose our language and who we are. We have to help our youth understand who they are. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't want to. But we have to give them experiences and opportunities, especially around people like Bob Nuñez and other people like Jorge, the people that are in this room. They need to be exposed to that. So we need to do that. So I share that little story so that you can understand how I got to where I got to. But I always believe in giving back, and I always will give back. Even at my age right now, this whole idea of Maestro program, we're starting as early as 9th grade. We want to get into those middle schools and put these kids on track to be teachers. If they don't become teachers, they're going to be well educated. They're going to be able to go into any field. But we do know one thing. I know one thing, and based on the stories I just said, there has to be an academic vision for the child, for the student, and there has to be parents supporting that and the teachers supporting that. So we got to do whatever we need to do to make that happen. And everybody in this room tiene algo que hacer en eso. Everybody in this room and everybody in our community. Because I think this is the innovation center of the world. And here's where it has to happen, especially with Latinos, and then we take the models national. So I do have a doctorate. I always carry this with me.
See, I should know better than to give him the mic. But you know, that's important. It's when you, like self-discovery, when you realize what you're going to do. And when you're the one that's going to be there, and for how long you're going to be there. I always say that I'm retired, but I always know that I'm really not. And you're right, it is it's not work, it's a calling. And I actually remember exactly when I decided, or it was made known to me what I was going to do. And up here, it was, when I first got here, everybody always told me about Cesar, always. You know, this is where he was at, this is where he lived, this is what he did, all that. But that's not how I knew him. And I knew him when I worked in Riverside, so near the end of his time. And he was in Coachella Valley when he went there to help the farm workers there. And I met him because I was with the county office of education, and we did all of the educational programs for the migrant workers. And I was really quite content to go out, make sure the money was spent right, that we did the programs the way they were supposed to be done. Not that they were done right, just that they were done the way they're supposed to be done. And so I remember meeting him and they were getting ready to pick it the next day. And I showed up with my three-piece suit. And I was looking at the program, looking at the books to make sure that that program had spent their money correctly. And he asked me to sit down. And I kept thinking, I remember looking at my watch and saying, well, I have about 13 minutes. Well, so I said, I can sit down for 13 minutes. And I sat down and I said, yes. And he goes, no, sit down. And I said, I am sitting down. He goes, no. He goes, just sit. Just sit. He goes, okay, so what do you do here? I go, well, I'm here, I was in charge of early education for the county office. And I said, I'm in charge of these programs. He goes, no. What do you do here? And that must have gone on for 12 minutes, so I started to stand up. He goes, where are you going? ¿Dónde vas? I go, I have to go now. He goes, just sit. What do you do here? And after about 10 more minutes, when he figured out I wasn't going to get where he wanted me to be, he goes, you shape lives here. You either help people grow or you crush them, one of the two. Which are you going to pick? And it hit me. I had to pick. So that's when I decided what I was going to do. Just a different art.
You know, Bob, we've been around a few years and I've seen a lot of things. And I said this earlier, you know, the movimiento is in full swing. I mean, it has to. It
It
has
still
to be.
is.
It has to be. Our people are so hardworking and so dignified. It is challenging to see sometimes the challenges, el abuso sometimes that our people have to undergo, experience. And, you know, I stop and think about making America great again. And we heard that, and we've heard it, and I think about my indigenous roots and my Iberic roots. Indigenous people have been here 10,000 years. You know, we stop to think about, in my situation when I was living there in New Mexico, my father telling us, my dad telling me, and my grandfather, about my grandfather, you know, in 1848, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, California, all this land of the Southwest was lost, was taken. I shouldn't say lost, it was taken. So when I hear Make America Great Again, I have to think, I didn't cross the border crossed me. All of us have a right to be here. All of us are part of the fabric of this great country. You know, I hear Trump say we should build a wall, and then I was at another event here recently where I heard a Republican person from down south saying that we should build a wall, and I heard other people, Democrats saying, and there were some others saying, you know, that wall doesn't need to be built. For the first time in the history of California, more people are returning to Mexico than ever. Think about it. For the last 50 years, ever since the Bracero program, there's been an increase in the numbers of people coming to this country, especially from Mexico. So for the first time in the history, more people are returning to Mexico. So it only leads me to believe that they're building that wall to keep us in. Think about it. ¿Quién va a hacer el trabajo? Who's going to do the hard work? You go to any restaurant in town in the Silicon Valley, even in Japantown, I'm living close to Japantown now, all the Mexicanos are doing sushi, making the sushi, right? East Side Sushi. Mexicanos are creative. We're talented. We're hardworking. I think Trump's trying to keep us in. He better, because we're the future of this country. There's no doubt in my mind. But it's because of people like yourselves and people like Bob that are feeling that spirit. This is a great time to be in this country and to be Latino. But we can't let our guard down. It has to be about quality education. It has to be about preschool education, getting our kids in those preschool programs, getting the mothers that are out there looking for childcare, making sure that they have quality childcare while they go to work and go to school. It's about providing that education. It's about, at some point, we gotta figure out the housing situation in this valley. I hate to say this, folks, but if you're like average or the working poor, and that's about $100,000 a year, your children aren't gonna be able to buy a home here. How do we work that out? Why did this happen? Okay, we gotta figure those things out. We've gotta work with people to make sure that our kids have opportunities to live and grow and have their families where their grandparents are at, or where their parents are at. Those are the challenges, and those are the challenges I see. And there's no easy answer. But quality education, we have, that's a must. We've gotta make sure that those things are happening. And that's why in my little granito that I'm trying to give back now, and Bob said it, is the Maestro program. So, you know, I've been a teacher educator for 40 years. I've written about bilingual education. We're starting the program. It's been around 3 years at the Foundation for Hispanic Ed. Roberto Cruz Leadership Academy is a teacher academy. So we're identifying kids as early as 9th grade to put them on track to be teachers. We want to do the same thing here in Milpitas. I want to work with Bob. I want to work with Jorge, Michael Mooney, and all this operation. I was at Oak Grove High yesterday, and we have a small group of bilingual kids there. And not only the Latino kids, but African-American kids, the Asian kids. You know that when I came to Fresno State in 1981, I did two things. I was a professor there for 22 years. I immediately looked at how are we training teachers, and how many Latino teachers do we have? 1981. And I was the first Latino to ever teach a core education class at Fresno State. Okay, so they hadn't had a history of working with Latinos. I was the first. So I asked the question and I saw what we were doing. The model for training teachers hasn't changed in 60 years, folks. It was created in 1959 by the Fisher Act, tweaked a little bit in 1970 by Ryan. So this 50-year program that we have in place today at all schools, and then it's an older program, and our kids are succeeding in it through the pipeline. And the reason why is in 1981 there was 8% Latino teachers in the state of California. Today there's 18%. The needle has only moved in 37 years 10%. So that means we'd have to go up to 2057 or so to move it another 10%. We can't wait that long. We need, not that we just need Latino teachers or black African American teachers. We need to get those kids to be the role models. We need them to get in there and do the hard work, especially if they're in Silicon Valley, because they already live here. We don't have to bring teachers from the projects back east to come here and work. We have our own talent right here, but we have to cultivate that. That's why I said Milpitas, Milpa. I grew up on a farm. And I remember distinctly the little matitas of chile, maíz, tomates. We'd have to plant them one by hand. And my dad would say, okay, escárdale ahora, you have to hoe. Acres. Yeah, we did a little bit with the horses and the plows, but that's true. And then we had to do it by hand. After that, after doing 2-3 acres, así, I remember distinctly, because we had little cuartitos that we'd sleep in. 2 in the morning, my dad would start gritando, llegó el agua, llegó el agua. I knew exactly what that meant. You had to ask permiso to use water in New Mexico because it was so sacred and so rare. You can't just get water when you want. And he said that he meant we can now use the water. So we'd run to the ditch, open up el cubo, start watering, and we'd water at night. And we'd have to feel where the water was at, for those little matitas, those little plants. And after that, we'd water. Guess what? 3 days later, that little mud and that watering was over. You gotta go back in there with a hoe again. So ahí estaba yo and mi hermano Billy, my brother and I, con el hacedor. And that's exactly what we have to do with our youth today. We have little matitas in our schools. Tomatitos, we have chile, we have maíz. Those little kids are our little plants. We have to cultivate them because I'm telling you all right now, like my dad, I can still hear it. Llegó el agua. I'm telling you all, llegó el agua. We gotta water right now. We gotta cultivate. We gotta make sure that those little kids are getting what they need. And that's how I grew up. That's why I can't stop.
You know, and we have opportunities now here in Milpitas. You know, one of the things, and I'm looking for Mike. Yeah, cool. So we really hopefully are on our way with the Milpitas Promise, which is anyone that graduates out of Milpitas High will get to get their AA degree without a cost to them, not for their books, not for tuition. I know San Jose has it, Ohlone has it, so we're gonna do that. And I know we're working on that, but I always get tired of saying that we're working on it. And so we're gonna get it done. I know that the police office, POA for Milpitas, the Firefighters Association, a foundation I know is putting dollars in to make sure that those youth that want to come to a community college and get their first 2 years out of the way can do that without a cost to them. They can stay home, save their parents' money, and then get ready to go their last 2 years and get their BA. And I think that's important. I think that's something we need to be able to do. How many here got an AA degree, got their first 2 years at a community college? See, that's important. And if you're a parent, it's really important. But it's those things that, in the Latino community, Vietnamese community, any community, really you want to be able to say, it's possible, you can do it here. You can do it, you can start it here in this building. And so I think it is with your program, it's programs we're still trying to start. And if you had some kind of hiccup sometime in your high school career, we still can get you through those programs. We still can help your parents, we still can help you so that you still get that education, because without that, you end up not being able to survive here, not be able to live here in this county, any city in this county. And you end up having to move outside, and then where do we really end up? And you're right, as I look at, not only at any restaurant, but almost any place in the service industry, the Latinos are there. And it's important that here in the city of Milpitas, I can look at the persons that have come, that are on the city council, that are in this room, that have supported what I would consider the working poor, to make sure that they can live in this city. And we need to continue to do that to make sure that they can work here, live here, and their children get a quality education. Latino, Vietnamese, whatever, but that they can then continue on and get some of those jobs that are $100,000 to $150,000. But if we don't do something, we'll end up, the numbers will keep shrinking, and they will be non-existent. And I don't want to have that happen. And I know you don't want to have that happen. It's important that persons like you and I don't go away for different reasons, but that we don't go away, and that others really don't retire. You're right, it's time for us to continue in the way that we do things, because we have different ways that we do things. But we need to continue to go out and find those persons that maybe have stepped away for a while and bring them back, and in all the cities in this county. And education, I truly believe, is where they need to be helpful. Because without some type of advanced degree, you can't survive in this county.
On that note, I want to say that we're not letting you guys go anywhere, okay? So we're going to keep you as long as we possibly could. But on that note, I also want to, at this point, first of all, let's give them a round of applause because these are incredible. And at this point, we're going to open it up to Q&A from the audience. So anybody that, has any specific questions for either Mr. Munoz or Dr. Lopez, please go ahead and we'll take that roll on right now. Don't all start at once.
Question right here, brother.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for sharing those amazing stories, and my hat's off to both of you gentlemen for your contributions and enlightenment. My question to you is, as a Latino professional, I'd like to understand what you see as the best vehicles to serve as role models and to reach these students.
Very good. Well, first of all, parents are the first teachers, right? There's a saying in Spanish, no, un buen padre vale como 1000 maestros. That's an old Chinese proverb. So the parents have to be involved. They have to be the role models. And it's hard sometimes, right? I mean, most parents want to do the best for their kids, but challenging times, especially in living here in Silicon Valley, where you have to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, it's hard. So I think we have to help parents first and foremost. I think the second thing is, children, youth, just take basic time. They're in school 8 hours, they're at home 8 hours. That's where they need the parents and support and all those programs, after school programs. And thank God some kids are asleep 8 hours. We say that because some kids should be asleep. And I say that jokingly, but it's that 8 hours that they're in school. We need to help teachers, and teachers are struggling. I mean, it's hard to be a teacher. Here in Silicon Valley, come on. We need to help them, because if they're living here, they're having to maybe even have 2 jobs. Or maybe they're living in, with all due respect, past Gilroy out where Los Baños, having to drive in 2 hours, teach 8 hours, and then go back 2 hours. That's not a sustainable model. So we have to help those teachers. We also have to bring in, and I really think, more role models that are of people of color. And I'm not saying, and Michael Mooney's in here and other people, we've had some of the best professors at Fresno State were Anglo teachers, but we also had Latino teachers. And I say that because I've been 40 years of being in education, we still haven't moved that needle enough to get those roles. For example, today, where do you see a black African-American teacher teaching elementary school? You don't. Wouldn't it be good if you had a black African-American teacher teaching in East San Jose that spoke Spanish to our Latino kids? And if they were to say something and he'd say, mira, voy a hablar con tus papás, that would send a whole different message to our kids, okay? So we need to diversify the workforce for teachers. And then we have to have programs that help students when they're out of school. We need to have them, in sports and those kinds of things. So I think, and then there's programs out there, mentor programs, that we need to expand. And now with social media, it doesn't have to be just sitting face to face. They need to be able to talk to somebody sometimes. Not that everybody has to be a counselor, but they have to have access to people where they can reach out and say, I'm having a problem. So I think we need to be strategic. I think we need to look for the opportunities, but there's some things that already need to happen. But the parents are first, the teachers are second. Social media and using support systems like that are critical. We're in the Silicon Valley. Why not come up with some innovations that help these kids? That's my thinking. I don't know if you want to add to that, Bob.
So I'm going to be a little more specific, which is usually what gets me in trouble. So this is Milpitas. If you're in a school system, they give districts money specifically to help with parent engagement. And too often I see school districts not use that money to do that. Or they do it at such a superficial level that you couldn't tell that's what they're spending it on. So I think you go to that school district and you say, show me exactly how you spend that money. And if you think that allows you to actually be educated, be engaged. You know that dollars are being spent on mental health for students, for counseling for students at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels. Then great, because this district is doing that for you. If you don't believe that's what's happening, then you push back and get them to do that. You become the advocate for your children in that school system. I think that you then become the role model for your own children. I remember my first month as superintendent at Eastside. They have an annual role model conference, and it was held at James Lick High School. So I went there, and I'm the type that I'm a very shy person. So I stood in the back, was watching everybody up there, and they kept trying to get me to the front, and I said, no, I'm fine here. I'm fine right here. No, get up here. And I said, no, I'm fine right here. Finally, they just dragged me up there. It literally dragged me up there. And so I remember I smiled, I waved, and then came down. And then they dragged me back up, and I just had to stand there for the hour and a half. And afterwards, because I didn't understand that at all. But it was really just what you said, which is the persons there said, think about it, Bob. At James Lick, which is over 80% Latino, you're the superintendent. Supposedly, you're the person at this district. You know how many, you're like the CEO. You know how many Latino kids here have ever seen a CEO that looks like them? Stand there so they can see you. And I thought, but I'm not doing anything. So it doesn't make any difference. Just stand there. So sometimes it's just showing up to show that, in fact, that could be them. After a while, I didn't just stand there. I actually was able to say a few words. But I think it is, for me, the reason I got the parents involved is because I would prefer them to see their own parents standing up for them and showing them how to do that. So to make sure that their parents were seen as someone that would protect their rights and give them opportunities they wouldn't normally have. Because once you did that for a parent, they then stood up for themselves in front of the county government, the city government, you name it, and they weren't taken advantage of. So I think you can become that.
Right up here in front.
Hello, my name is Ernesto Bejarano. I want to also thank you both for sharing. Here it's just a flood of wisdom coming this way. It's kind of like llegó el agua. It's like the wisdom has started flowing. But I'm actually a candidate for November election for the Allen Rock School District. So I'm really trying to take in all this information, and I'm happy that a lot of what you're saying, lines up with what I've been working on as kind of my platform in terms of engagement and access for parents to the process and all these things. And my question is twofold, and it's offshoots of what you've already said. In terms of parent engagement, as I've been lucky enough to have known how to access systems and be involved as a parent, but it's always a core group of parents. Every school I've been to, or my daughters, or places I've worked, there's a core group, and that's awesome. But there's 80% of the parents that it's a challenge to get them looped in and engaged. So, any thoughts on a model or an approach to engage those who, if they're given, and I've seen that if they're given an opportunity to just participate at a kind of initial beginner level, it kind of brings them in, but it's not always the case. So any thoughts on that? And then the second part, my professional career, 22 years, I've done social work and mental health. And in doing that, I've learned that there's often, not only in our community, but particularly in our community, there's a stigma around mental health or receiving services like that. So again, any thoughts on kind of breaking that down so that we can provide these type of services and set up systems in the district so that our parents will feel okay with accessing that type of assistance for their children. Thank you.
Good question. You wanna take- I've got some ideas on a model. I'll share.
So maybe the last part, second part first. I think with regard to providing services, mental health, counseling and such. At Eastside, one of the things we try to do is provide those services where it wasn't really school staff that did it, that was really nonprofits. So that it didn't appear that to parents or students that, well, that's gonna be on my record, that's gonna be something that's gonna follow me. And also that it's included in, if you went to look at some of the schools that are on the east side, it was more a medical model, so that you could go to the same place to have a medical checkup, a dental checkup, and at that same place, you'd also get those same kind of services. That's number one. I think it's important that you say you would get those kind of services because they're part of a normal sort of stream of services you would get. Two, I think back to the parents. The community I have found that has the same sort of, they shy away from the services, being involved in such, but you can always get together, is the Vietnamese community. They will always come together as a group. And so one of the things we would do is bring together more than just one community. The Vietnamese community, the Latino community. We would bring interfaith communities together. So Muslim community, Latino community, which is a good combination to bring. And then say, okay, what are some of the needs? And once they found they weren't the only ones with those needs, they would have, that would broaden the conversation. It would allow you then to provide for more input, but also would broaden their experiences then with who they could go talk to. And the whole idea is just allow them to have more people to talk to with the issues that they want to bring forward. But it does take, and food, always provide food, always. But it is to structure it, have a structured model. Because without that, it turns out that everybody complains, and then there's no outcome at the end, and then what was the use of the meeting?
So in reference to a model, I was very fortunate when I was at Fresno State. A colleague of mine that was working in special education, Dr. D. Schilling, had a model, and she called it parent power. So she said, David, I'm working with these special ed parents, and there's a process that parents go to when you tell them that their child's exceptional. There's denial, there's anger, there's blame of the other parent. There's a process that they go through. So I watched this happen, and she says, I have bilingual parents now, but I'm not bilingual. Could you help me? So I helped her for 2 years. I learned that model was great because it's a real structured model. She called it parent power. It's a structured model where you invite the parents in, and you don't just say you're going to be here at 6:30 and it's a Robert's Rules of Order. That's not going to work. You have to bring parents in and encourage them. You have food. You have childcare. We had a couple of twins that were, they were a handful. They were running around. We had to bring them, put them aside, where the parents could sit down and talk, but it was based on them sharing their challenges and the kinds of resources that they thought they would need. And we put some resources together for them. It was a whole 16-week program. So after that happened, I learned a lot. Personally, I learned a lot. I took a sabbatical, took it out for a year in a bilingual setting, a bilingual school. They had it in that school for 10 years. It was a great model. I recently, 3 years ago, brought it to Luis Valdez High School in East San Jose, the charter school that's on the campus of Yerba Buena. And Jeff Camarillo at first was saying, I don't know, Dr. Lopez, this sounds a little bit too involved, da, da, da. You go ask him now about that program, it's parental support. A month, 2 months ago, we were before the East Side Board for reauthorization. The majority of those parents showed up. They had taco stands. They were feeding all the parents. They were feeding the kids. They showed up to that meeting. So it's empowering the parents. But you can't just say, vamos a tener un cafecito at 10 o'clock. That's nice, but that's kind of a drive-by. You've got to build and you've gotta work with the parents. It works, so that Poder de los Padres, parent, there's $13.5 billion worth of assets under management, okay? Recently, we had a little bit of a challenge. I don't know if you read about that in the paper. And my colleagues have asked me to be an advisor to the new CEO, interim CEO of the organization, Greg Avis, who's very, very successful business person. And yesterday I sat with him, and he asked me, what are you doing now? And so I told him exactly kind of the things I'm telling you. I said, I didn't tell him about my parents, but I told him, Greg, I said, you know, Silicon Valley Community Foundation, we went through a whole year of discussions with the community to find out what does the community want. And after a whole year of discussions here in San Jose, Milpitas, I mean, we had them all over the valley, mostly the two-county area, Santa Clara, San Mateo County. And the priorities that came out from the community was, number one, education, especially early childhood education, okay? So education was key. The second one was immigration. You know, the DACA, we all know about that. We know about immigration. Most of us are immigrants, I know that. The only ones that aren't are the Native American, but the more recent immigrants, the ones that are undocumented, there's that. That's another priority. The third one is housing. I talked a little bit about that. The other is community engagement. So those are the priorities of the Community Foundation. So Greg, I sat with him and I said, you know, here's what we're doing in terms of educating teachers. And I told him about my project, and I says, these people are immigrants in many cases. You know, it's about education, it's about starting young, it's about training teachers to go back into the classroom. So I had that opportunity to influence and talk to and advise the person that's the interim. Now, the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, the future, I think, once we get through our challenges, will be focused more, I'd say more focused on especially the two county areas of San Mateo and Santa Clara County. And I think there are some very good people on the board, and there are very good people in the tech companies. A lot of them are very recent immigrants themselves, so to speak. I say that because the character of San Francisco and of the entire Bay Area is changing. So we're dealing with a different kind of a leadership and CEOs of these companies. But I think they want to learn. I think that we have to help them understand. Not only is it important for a business to have diversity, because Oscar, as you well know, the diversity in a business obviously translates into more dollars because you have different ideas, you have, you know, ideas coming from different points of view, different lenses. People know that. But sometimes, I hate to say that, I'll be real cautious how I say it, but I'll say, people usually hire people that look like them and talk like them and act like them. So we have to look for ways to get in there and discuss these kinds of things, and have these discussions. But I think there's an appetite, and people want to hear what's going on, because I'll tell you what Greg has said, what really impressed me before I had dinner with him, I did my homework, and he was the chair of the Irvine Foundation for many years. And you can look him up, Greg Avis, there's a 2-minute video on him, and he talks about the issues of our time. What is the issue of our time? Here's a very wealthy businessman that understands, he's saying, it's the disparity in income and the disparity of people that have and have not. Especially here in Silicon Valley, because it's exacerbated. We know what exacerbated. I mean, we got people that are very rich and people that are struggling. The majority are struggling. In the two-county area of San Mateo and Santa Clara County, there are 2.3 million people. That's us. 800,000 of us, a third of us, are either receiving private or public assistance. That's the working poor, and that number is growing faster and faster every day, right? So we have to be at the table. We have to have a real clear message. They want to listen. They live here. You listen to Greg and what he has to say in that video, they want to listen because they know it's not a sustainable model.
Dr. Lopez is much more trusting than I am. I am I'm on the city council for Milpitas. I'm also the vice president for the NAACP for this county. I'm also co-chair for La Raza Roundtable. for Northern California. But I'm also the chair for the Republican Party for this county. We put those all together, and there isn't many organizations that I don't come into contact with in some fashion. If they cared that much, it'd be fixed already. So that's why I'm not quite as trusting. So I look at it a little differently of what to do. So last year, a foundation I'm associated with put interns into different cities in the county government. And because I'm a firm believer that you need to put persons into either public administration so that as laws and ordinances are passed, the real power is in developing the rules and regulations of how those are implemented. And then we also put persons with elected officials, because get yourself elected and be the one that actually develops those laws. But at the same time, find out what high-tech companies are selling to those cities and counties. And now we're going to go back to those places and find out. Now we want to put Latinos, African American, Vietnamese students with you. Because if you really want to find us, we're not that hard to find. You know, I see persons that look like me every day. And so we're putting them in starting this summer. And when they say, oh, you know, we really can't find them, I say, get in my car and I'll show you. You know, it's not, and those that say, you know, we don't have the resources, I say, you don't have to pay for them. We're paying ourselves. And I'm amazed at those that still tell us no. Because then I go back to those cities, then I say, you know, you just spent $34 million with that company. Tell me why. Or those that say yes, then I say, I agree. This is a company that really does care, and you should continue supporting by buying their products. So I think there's ways we can, in fact, be supportive of those high-tech companies that follow through with that promise. But those that do not, and it's only lip service, we should not.
On that note, I know that there's some of you that still have questions. We're going to have a reception right now as we conclude the program. So there's food, there's drinks, and obviously both honorees are going to be out there, and you can ask them questions.
The last thing I showed them how to do was
Conocí a la señora Betty. Mi nombre es Alejandrina Ontiveros y estamos hablando acerca de educación y pienso yo que sí es importante, muy importante todo lo que los padres hacen para que sus hijos puedan tener éxito en la vida, y una de esas cosas es, pues claro, la educación. Y hay muchas cosas que los padres pueden hacer, ¿verdad? Yo, como por ejemplo mi padre, él vino en los años 40 y él anduvo piscando algodón. Entonces, esa es la razón por la que nosotros estamos aquí.
Mi nombre es Francisco Ontiveros. Soy el papá de Alejandro Ontiveros. Yo me recuerdo cuando empecé a envolverme en el programa de educación migrante, empecé a participar en las juntas de los padres para envolvernos en la educación de los hijos. En una conferencia que fui a Los Ángeles del programa de educación migrante, fue donde me motivó más a participar, y fue de ahí donde estoy hablando como del 1984, empecé y se me ocurrió decir que los padres son los primeros maestros, o sea, y naturales. Los maestros en la escuela son la continuación de la educación de los padres académicamente. Los valores, los hijos los ven en la casa y los padres son maestros también. Después, como 4 o 5 años después de haber dicho eso, me dio gusto ver que en el estado de California, en el Departamento de Educación Migrante, salió Los padres son maestros también. Un logo, unos folletos que venía, como decía, de la educación de los hijos y el envolvimiento de los padres. Yo seguía así hasta 1989. Ya no tenía hijos en las escuelas ni en high school, así es de que pues hasta ahí pensé que ya mi llamado había concluido en la participación de los padres con los hijos académicamente.
Yes, Jorge Escobar. I'm the Vice President of Admin Services at San Jose City College. We are here at the San Jose City College Extension in Milpitas. Really looking forward to new days in education and obviously trying to understand and leverage the wonderful resources that are already existing in our community, especially with La Raza Historical Society. So it's good that this has been documented. Who knows, this may be part of history, but we should also look at the history that has been built already for many, many years. Basically, we're building history. You're continuing to build history related to educating Latinos, empowering the community, and also leveraging the great steps that have been taken already by past generations like Dr. Cruz, like Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Dr. David Lopez, and many others who over the years have already inspired us to develop better solutions to educating the community and increasing cultura.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Castillo, and I found this forum to be at the heart of what is very important for the future generations, which I feel personally, having 3 sons myself, is education. And so I really appreciate the president of San Jose City College and Alex Ontiveros allowing the public to come and interject and have a mastermind. And the panelists were excellent, of course, and all their accolades very well deserved. And I learned a lot, and I think we all appreciated everything that was shared at the core of the heart of future education for us here in Silicon Valley. Thank you. There's a lot of Latinos here in the Bay Area, and the statistic is fairly low with higher level education. So these platforms and a future discussion perhaps about that would be incredibly wonderful for our future generations through the parents, of course, which is the primary teachers in a child's life. Thank you.
I worked right there as well a long time ago to...
So my name is Soko Castañeda Lyles, and I attended today's event. And for me, it's what we needed to hear. It was an invitation to serve our students, an invitation to mentor our Latino students. And for me, I found it very, very powerful. In essence, they invited us not only not to open doors or windows, but to break walls for our students. We need more Latino students in college. I teach at Santa Clara University, and it breaks my heart to see 2 or 3 Latino students in a class of 30. And we need to change that. We need to change those statistics. So for me, I would have a panel of women, and to have them talk about their educational trajectory, their journey, because as Latinas, we have many gender expectations that do not necessarily include college. So how do these women overcome those barriers? How do they break out of those barriers, out of those traditional roles that it's expected of us to fill in?
My my name is Nancy Rosales. These types of events always excite me because we can share, we can learn, and we can ask a lot of questions about what's next, what to expect, what we want to see, hopefully in the near future. What I think these events should bring more of, I'm thinking more educational when it comes to topics that affects our community. I'm a big advocate for financial education for kids that are 5 to 7, 8 years old, to educate the younger the better, to educate the parents about financial freedom. It starts young.
Hi, my name is Alex Ontiveros. I'm the founder and the CEO of Silicon Valley Latino. Silicon Valley Latino is a social venture, and we primarily act as a media company. We also produce programs, and one of the programs that we produce is the Fireside Chats. And today we had an exceptional Fireside Chat with 2 iconic Latino leaders in education and in civic leadership. We featured Dr. David Lopez and City Council member of Milpitas, Bob Nuñez. So if you tune into one of our platforms, you will see some of the interviews at a later time. And Dr. Ramon Martinez, thank you so much for being here and capturing this for your audiences as well. We appreciate it.